She's the largest warship ever built. 100,000 tons of steel, more than 1,000 feet from bow to stern, driven by 2 nuclear reactors that give her a range measured not in miles, but in decades. The USS Gerald R carries an air wing of up to 75 aircraft, launches them with electromagnetic catapults instead of steam, and can sustain a tempo of air operations that no other Navy on Earth can match. She is, by almost every measure, the most concentrated expression of military power ever assembled on a single platform. And yet, as she sailed home to Norfolk in the spring of 2026 after one of the longest carrier deployments in American history, a quieter and more unsettling question followed in her wake. In an age of cheap drones and precision missiles, is the supercarrier still the king of the sea? Or is she a magnificent relic, the most expensive target the ocean has ever known? To understand the argument, you first have to understand the scale of what the Ford represents. She's the lead ship of an entirely new class, the first clean-sheet American carrier design in more than 40 years, conceived to replace the Nimitz-class giants that have anchored U.S. naval power since the 1970s. Her 2 A-1B reactors generate at least 25% more power than her predecessors, and the share of that power available as electricity has been tripled. A deliberate choice made to feed the energy-hungry systems of the future. Her flight deck is redesigned for speed. The electromagnetic aircraft launch system, known as EMALS, replaces the old steam catapults with a smoother, more controllable launch that stresses airframes less and pushes sortie rates higher. The advanced arresting gear brings the aircraft back. She's designed to launch and recover faster, longer, and with several hundred fewer sailors than the ship she replaces. On paper, she's a leap forward. In practice, that leap costs nearly $13 billion per ship. And the very technology that makes her remarkable is the same technology that made her one of the most troubled procurement programs in modern naval history. But the Ford's true weapon is not the ship, it's the air wing she carries. FA-18 Super Hornets for strike and fleet defense, EA-18G Growlers for electronic attack, E-2D Advanced Hawkeyes flying as airborne command posts, extending the carrier's eyes hundreds of miles beyond the horizon. And on the way, 2 platforms that hint at where all of this is going. The F-35C Lightning II stealth fighter and the MQ-25 Stingray, an unmanned refueling aircraft that'll extend the reach of the air wing while folding robotics directly into the carrier deck. This is the logic of the carrier. It's a floating sovereign airbase, a piece of mobile national territory that can travel 500 miles in a day and project air power into a crisis without asking any other nation for permission to use its runways. We saw exactly this in early 2026 when the Ford was deployed in support of American operations against Iran. Over a single campaign, her strike group flew more than 10,000 launches and recoveries, while her escorting destroyers fired over 200 Tomahawk cruise missiles into Iranian targets. From the deck of one ship, the United States held an operational strike option over an entire region. When she came home, her crew received a Presidential Unit Citation. By that measure, the carrier had never looked more relevant. And yet, relevance and survivability are not the same thing. Here's when the modern battlefield begins to press in. Because the Ford herself carries almost no offensive weapons, her own armament is purely defensive, and deliberately so. Evolved Sea Sparrow missiles for medium-range interception, rolling airframe missiles for close-in defense, Phalanx Gatling guns as the last line, and a scattering of autocannons and heavy machine guns. Everything else, the radar, the ship self-defense system, the cooperative engagement capability that lets her share a single targeting picture with every ship in her group, the electronic warfare suite that can blind an incoming seeker, exists for one purpose: to keep her alive. Because the threats arrayed against her have changed almost beyond recognition. Consider what the war in Ukraine has demonstrated to the world's navies. A country with effectively no traditional fleet has driven a major surface navy out of large parts of the Black Sea, not with carriers or cruisers, but with cheap, fast, explosive-laden, uncrewed surface boats, with underwater drones, and with aerial drones costing a tiny fraction of the warships they threaten. The lesson was not lost on anyone. A modern carrier strike group must now defend not only against ballistic and cruise missiles, but against swarms of small drones from the air, fast attack craft and drone boats on the surface, and uncrewed vehicles below it. The economics are brutal. A single defensive interceptor missile can cost between $100,000 and $1 million. The drone it destroys might cost a few thousand. Win every engagement and you still lose the war of the magazine because the attacker can build 100 drones for the price of one of your interceptors and your launch cells are finite. This is the problem that's now reshaping the American fleet from the inside, and it's here that the most important recent modernization comes into focus. In October 2025, for the first time in history, a high-energy laser weapon was fired from the flight deck of a U.S. aircraft carrier. The system, a containerized laser called Locust, was rolled onto the deck of the carrier George H.W. Bush and, in a single live-fire sequence, detected, tracked, and destroyed multiple drones, including by some accounts a swarm of 17 targets. What makes this so significant is not the laser's raw power, which is modest, but its logic. A laser fires for roughly $3 to $5 a shot. Its magazine is effectively bottomless, limited only by electrical power and heat. And a nuclear-powered carrier has more electrical power to spare than any other ship afloat, which is precisely why naval thinkers have argued for over 2 decades that the carrier, with its enormous reactor output and deck space, is the natural home for directed energy weapons. The roll-on, roll-off design means no expensive structural rebuild. The laser simply draws from the ship's reactors and goes to work. The laser's one piece of a much larger shift. On the destroyers that screen the carrier, the Navy now fields the Helios system, a 60-kilowatt integrated laser, and Odin, a dazzler designed to blind the optical sensors of incoming drones without firing a shot. Both were present in the task forces operating against Iran in 2026. Counter-drone interceptors like Coyote and Roadrunner have been pushed out to carrier groups in the Middle East specifically because of the drone boat and aerial drone attacks launched by Houthi forces in the Red Sea. And looking further ahead, the Navy and Army together are pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into a joint laser weapon system aiming at the far harder problem, using directed energy not just against soft, slow drones, but against fast, low-flying, hardened cruise missiles. That goal remains years away. A drone's a soft target that a modest laser can burn through in seconds. A cruise missile is fast, maneuvering, and armored, and demands sustained energy through salt, humidity, and sea spray that scatter the beam. The laser age has begun, but it's not yet matured. So step back and weigh the two sides of the ledger. On one hand, the carrier's critics are right that it's the most concentrated, most expensive, most attractive target ever put to sea, and that the tools needed to threaten it have never been cheaper or more widely available. Against a peer adversary like China, with long-range anti-ship ballistic missiles and dense anti-access systems designed expressly to push carriers back beyond their effective range, the survivability question is real and unresolved. On the other hand, the carrier's defenders point out that no drone boat and no swarm has yet sunk a defended American supercarrier, that the strike group is a layered system, not a lone ship, and that the carrier's unique gift, sovereign, mobile air power with unlimited range and no need for foreign bases, is something no missile battery and no drone fleet can replicate. A drone can deny the sea, only a carrier can command it. The U.S. Navy itself is clearly wrestling with this tension, and you can read the doubt directly in its own decisions. In 2026, even as it celebrated the Ford's deployment, the Navy launched a formal review of the design of the next 2 carriers in the class, the future ships intended to carry the names Clinton and Bush, explicitly to interrogate their cost, their systems, and whether they still make sense. Officials spoke of increasing lethality and survivability while simplifying the design and cutting cost. The service has explored more than once the idea of smaller or even non-nuclear light carriers to supplement the giants, and the program's troubles are no secret. The next ship, the John F. Kennedy, has slipped roughly 2 years behind schedule, pushing the fleet temporarily down to 10 carriers as the legendary Nimitz finally retires. A single Ford-class hull now takes the better part of a decade to build and costs more than $13 billion. An enormous bet on a single platform in an era when the cost of threatening it keeps falling. And so we return to the question we began with, now sharper than before. The Gerald R. Ford is not obsolete. The drone war has not killed the carrier. It's changed what the carrier must become. The future giant will be defined less by how many aircraft it launches and more by how cheaply it can defend itself, by lasers drawing on a reactor's limitless power, by uncrewed aircraft sharing its deck, by a screen of robotic sensors and shooters extending far beyond the horizon. The supercarrier is being forced to evolve from a spear into a fortress, and from a fortress into something stranger still, a power station at sea, projecting energy in every sense of the word. Whether that evolution outruns the swarm is the defining naval question of our time. For now, the largest warship ever built still sails, watched by the world, feared by her enemies, and quietly racing against the cheapest weapons ever invented. The age of the giant is not over, but for the first time in a century, the giant has reason to look over her shoulder. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell for more content like today's. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.